tonight. Ladies kind of running the bird world. So if you've joined us before for Nature Nerd Night, the kind of structure of this is more like Science Cafe like. So you're not going to see some PowerPoint slides. You might see a couple here, but otherwise it's kind of just an informal chat. And we're going to discuss some really nerdy topics when it comes to birds and how those birds find mates, and most importantly, the females and what do they do in this whole situation.
Exactly. They're the underdogs, but it turns out they have a huge role.
Yes, most people do not give enough credit.
Yes.
So, all right. So really quick, we got a couple of housekeeping things here. We just want to make sure that if you guys have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. However, make sure that they are topically relevant to what we're doing here. Just be nice to every single person. Don't put anything inappropriate in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have to kick you out. And we don't want to do that. We want to talk birds. So
yeah, we want to be nerdy.
Yeah, we don't think we're going to have a problem, but we just want to make sure we put that out there for everybody. And then just as another heads up, we do have some more of these shows planned. So if you joined us last time, great. If you're here tonight, that's obviously great. We also have some more coming up. So every single was it the third Tuesday of the month? Third Tuesday of the month, we're going to be having some Nebraska Nature Nerd Nights. We have everything from parasites to fossils. We're going to be talking about some mustelids. Amber, I know you love mustelids.
Cannot wait for the mustelid one. That's the one I'm counting down.
Yeah. And we have venomous snakes coming up. We also have some fun research flops and failures. It's kind of the last one that we're going to talk about. So please do not forget to join us for those. Same time, 7 to 8 p.m. every third Tuesday of the month. All right. So we're going to be talking about some birds. We're going to stop sharing our screen here really quick.
Okay, so tonight it's all about birds. Like Monica said, it's about ladybirds specifically. A really cool reason why we're going to chat about that, and we'll get into that in a bit. But before we do, it is Nebraska Migratory Bird Month.
It is, yes.
So we have lots of really cool things happening.
Hey, ladies, your volume has decreased quite a bit. People are having trouble hearing you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? How's that, Allie?
It's the same.
Okay.
Is everyone having a problem or just a few select people? You might have to turn up your volume.
No, your volume decreased, like it was really loud and now it's lower.
Let me just unplug this.
Check everything's up. I don't know.
Do you want to test the speaker?
It seems to me like it's your position. When you lean up close, we can hear you. When you lean back, we can't hear you.
So can you hear us this way?
Better.
Better?
Mm-hmm.
All right, maybe we just need to set up a little bit more.
Yeah,
we'll try it out. We've been trying a new microphone, so thanks for working with us.
Good, it's better, they say. All right, well, just let us know. Allie, is that good? Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's Nebraska Bird Month this month, May. And it's because May is super exciting in Nebraska if you're a bird nerd like us, because I don't know about you all, but we've been noticing some exciting new visitors.
Yeah.
Bird visitors.
Birds,
right.
actually.
I've been seeing warblers. I've been seeing vireos. What have you been seeing?
I've just been seeing birds.
That's fine. That's fair.
Yep. Cardinals,
okay.
You know, maybe some crows.
Some robins.
Robins too. They're all over.
That's okay. That's totally fine. But we're really excited about that. If you're really interested in learning more about Nebraska Bird Month, there's really cool events going on across the state. It's a really amazing partnership and kind of coordinating effort. Check out nebraskabirdmonth.org. And there's also a statewide virtual bird BioBlitz happening all month. So if you're out and you're checking out some birds and you're using iNaturalist and you're using that to record your bird sightings, you can be a part of the statewide bird BioBlitz. And we will share more information. Thanks, Jason, for putting that in the chat. We can share more information with you afterwards. When we send out evaluation for this program, we'll send you all these resources for all these cool, nerdy bird things happening in Nebraska.
And Amber, you know what the best part about Nebraska Bird Month is? We have bird experts here tonight with us.
I know, that's pretty sweet. Maybe we should stop. Maybe they don't want to hear from us anymore. We should probably introduce the experts.
All right, let's start with it.
Okay, so tonight we have two amazing, super nerdy bird nerds.
Nerd birds. I like nerd birds, yeah.
One of them legally changed his name, I think. Is it on your birth certificate? Jason the Bird Nerd Saint Sauver. He is the education coordinator,
Oh,
curator.
it's all good.
Yeah, at Nebraska Audubon. And he's also at the Spring Creek Audubon Center. So he's with us tonight, and we're really excited to hear from him. And we also have Allie Mays with us tonight, the community science education specialist with Nebraska Game and Parks. So we're happy to have them here tonight. And I think we need to get started.
Yeah. So to get started, how did both you and Allie and Jason here, how did you become bird nerds? What really got you into birds?
You guys can fight for who goes first. It's up to
I'll go first.
Okay.
Beat ya. So I got into birds not until after I had already done my undergrad degree. And I did an internship out in California. And so when I tried to learn about birds in college, my ornithology teacher took me out into the woods and had me look at giant trees with tiny warblers at the tops of them. And it was early, and I couldn't care about it. Like, I was just like, I don't know about this. But then I went out to California, and I was in the Bay, and I started noticing all the shorebirds that had gathered during migration on the Bay. And the nice thing is about the shorebirds is they're bigger, and they just kind of stay still for longer. So I spent time observing them, and it was actually the avocets and the black-necked stilts, which were my catalyst birds that got me into birding. And then from there, I went on to learn and care about songbirds and do bird banding and more research with songbirds. But yeah, it was definitely the shorebirds that got me hooked.
Very interesting.
And we have avocets in Nebraska. Have you seen avocets here now?
Yeah.
I have. I saw some this year at Lake Wahoo.
Cool. Very cool. Awesome. What about you, Jason?
So I was the nerd part long before the bird part.
That checks out. I can see that.
Right? And I chose the moniker bird nerd much later. I was already into birds for a long time, and that started probably way back with my grandma. My grandma loved birds and watched them. She had a feeder. She's the first person I remember that had me watching birds at the feeder outside her bay window, kind of at the little house that we would spend time at. And she gave me my first golden field guide. They had like only 26 birds in them, but it's what I remember first identifying my own bird, something I hadn't seen before or thought I hadn't, and I figured out what it was from that book. It was a junco at the time, so I was very excited. And ever since then, I've been pretty hooked. But I chose bird nerd actually later in life when I was doing environmental education to make it a little more apparent to especially youth. I work with a lot of kids. That science and being outside is cool, right? Being a nerd and being into things like STEM activities is really, really fun and awesome, and it's something they could consider. So that's kind of why I took that nickname. It also seemed to fit pretty easily.
It does fit.
It
does fit, and it's super cool. Hello, look at us. We're like,
It's cool to be a nerd.
we're hanging
And,
out,
yeah.
we're playing the ukulele.
We got
working.
33 other nerds
Exactly.
on here with us,
Yeah.
so.
Super cool to be a nerd. That's really exciting. Why are we talking about female birds tonight? What is so exciting and special, specifically, why are we calling out the ladybirds tonight? What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
So for me, and Audubon is doing this a lot right now over the past year, but especially out here at Spring Creek this month during Bird Month this year. One main reason is they're really understudied and underappreciated. For many, many years of conservation for many reasons, which I think we're going to get into more later, but they're just not studied. They're, couple reasons is they might be camouflaged or cryptic plumage, so you don't see them as much. So they were just missed maybe when studies were going on. There's the obvious reason of, unfortunately, hundreds of years ago, or even more recently than that, a lot of the people doing the research were male. They were looking at the bright male birds and they just ignored the female birds. So there's a lot of different reasons. But when you really look into it, and I know Allie can add to this and we can all chat about it more as we go through the night, but if you really look into what's driving bird, behavior and mating and all of that, it's the female's choices. They're doing all of the work, they're making all of the choices. so much of what we know is depending on what they're doing, a lot more really than the male. The male is usually doing some crazy thing because he's got to show off or do a dance because that's what she has, you know, natural selection.
So
Is like,
so the ladies really are they're running the bird world.
yeah, totally running the world.
And that, okay, so that we got to talk about that. That's very good. Can you, so Allie or Jason, like, to set the stage, kind of walk us through a typical day in the life. Like, let's look at both females and males and just what's the difference between what they're doing each day that might dictate like why ladies are running that bird world. So let's think about like a bird in Nebraska on a typical day, whether that's in the breeding season. You know, what is a female bird's agenda when she wakes up in the morning? What are her goals? What's her to-do list?
Allie, how do you want to split? Do you want to talk about a female and I can do the male? I think we should talk spring because we're in spring. This
That's
is when
a good
they're
idea. Yeah, I like that.
in this area of the world.
Sure, Jason, you go first.
Okay, so I'm going to use a resident bird. Some of our migratory birds would be very different, right? It could be a very different actually, let's use a migratory bird. Resident birds, something like a cardinal, something that isn't going to move far. Their activity budget will change. And if you're not sure what an activity budget is or an energy budget, that's just what you expend in energy in a day to like live basically as a bird,
like a
right?
maintenance, right? Just to keep it going.
Exactly right.
Okay, so my activity budget includes like getting my 4-year-old ready in the morning, getting breakfast,
Getting coffee.
I miss taking those naps on the weekend. That never happens in my activity budget anymore, but like it used to. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, my
Like
activity budget has a lot more sitting than yours obviously does,
Okay.
but yes.
Right, gotcha.
So let's use, I'm going to use a Baltimore Oriole.
Oh, I
right?
love it. Yes.
Really cool migratory bird, neotropical migrant that's just returning back to the Nebraska area. An easy one to pick out and see, but the male and female are going to have very different sort of energy or activity budgets throughout the day. As they arrive, right? So they've been migrating, exhausting to begin with, right? For both the male and the female. Males usually arrive a little earlier, set up territory, but not always. And then that male is literally going to be guarding territory. So they're going to be singing, they're going to be, you know, finding a spot. This is going to be the best. And then they're going to, once they've got that spot, they're going to be also singing to have that mate come in. And don't forget, they need to be feeding. They need to be preening. So there's a lot of things. And this is, you can do activity budgets. It's a lot of part of researching birds. It's, I've done some of the surveys and it's literally all you do is you, when you see a bird, watch it for as long as you can before it flies off and write everything down that it does. And you get then an average of what a species, like how long do they spend preening? How long do they spend doing this? But predominantly in spring, a male's job early in spring before like maybe the eggs in the nest are like made, like and laid, it's all about guarding territory and finding a mate. I think it's going to be very different from the female side of things.
Yeah, so the female, she's also migrated in, right? She's expended a lot of energy. She also needs to spend quite a bit of time eating, and then she has to find the most suitable mate. And while a male might be guarding a territory, if a female wants to look at multiple options, she's going to have to fly around and use more energy to find that mate. And then after she selects a mate, she's the one who chooses the nest site, and then she's also the one that weaves the nest. So the female, you know, the male is defending the territory, but within that territory, then the female is setting up house. And that's even before they lay the eggs, and then the female takes all that energy to produce those eggs, and then taking care of the eggs, which I can't quite remember if they do it together, the raising of the young or not, but
well, and you just mentioned something, Allie, that's kind of interesting. When you're talking about activity budgets, we're thinking about like how they spend their energy. And so, Jason, you mentioned like you can actually observe this. I could probably sit at my window and watch a feeder and do all these things. But you just said like even the effort of producing those eggs internally, that's something like that's taking a lot of energy like we can't even observe. Does that make sense? So like that's something like to even extra to think about all that energy it takes to even produce that egg. Yeah, that's really interesting. What about females singing? So, if we think about right now, like have you been hearing birds singing right now?
All the time. Yes. I just actually saw some Orioles, some Baltimore Orioles. Yeah. Look at me.
Are you
knowing birds.
serious?
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you.
I actually stopped and said to my 2-year-old, I was like, look, there's an Oriole. And she
And you
didn't
knew
care.
what it was.
She didn't care. But I was like, wow, they're in our tree.
That's
I'm
amazing.
seeing them. Very neat. Yes.
Yes. Very exciting. So when we're hearing all these birds singing right now, like I guess I could ask the audience as well, like what we're primed to think is that's all the boys singing their beautiful songs to get the dates.
And that's what I thought right away too. But after hearing Jason and Allie talk, I think I might be looking at it different now.
So is that the case? Is it only the males that sing? Do females sing? Like what's going on there? Do you guys know?
No, I don't know at all. I think it's the end of the show. No,
We got the wrong experts then.
So yeah, and one of the reasons I love doing shows like this is it got me to look more into what I think I know, right? I've been surveying birds for some time, and talking to you guys right before the show, both Allie and I had some stats, and it's somewhere between about 65 and 75% of songbirds, the females sing as well. It's like, that's a huge amount. Like,
how did we not know that? That's like, that's 3/4 of
right?
birds. And we just assume.
So there's some easier answers, and then there's some tricky answers.
Okay.
Like the one, for example,
tricky. Yeah.
Think about birds that are, and I always get this wrong, someone correct me with the actual nerdy science, but
okay.
The birds are either dimorphic or monomorphic, right? Where it's like they look like exactly the same, or they look very different, right?
Sexual dimorphic. Dimorphic is they look different.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they look the same, but so think of where they look the same.
Okay.
Right? Like blue jays, who else? Right?
Black-capped chickadees, no, yes?
Yeah, black-capped chickadees, that's a good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you see a bird singing and you've always been thought, and you see it, and they look the same, how do you know for sure if it's male or female?
That's true.
So that's one. In tons of data over over hundreds of years, it may have been a female bird singing,
okay,
and we just didn't know until much later in scientific studies. So that's one reason. Song sparrows, that's the one. I read a research lately. Female song sparrows sing a lot to help guard the territory with the male, but they look like the male. So like, who knew until like you were noticing, if you studied song sparrows long enough to see them both together, you would finally figure that out.
Okay, I have a thought on this, Jason. I have worked at different banding stations before in the past, and I know that when we get a bird in and we're trying to identify a female or male, and we are not 100% clear on it, we put unknown, right? Because we're not going to make an assumption on that, because we want that data to be correct. And if we don't know, we don't know. That's better data than assuming incorrectly. So what I'm hearing from you is potentially in the last hundreds of years, it seems like scientists could have even been assuming and making an assumption that it's male. It's like, why would that be happening in science? Or is that the tricky answer? I mean, is this getting a little spicy? Getting a little spicy.
Well, and I'm sure Allie can answer this one as well, but it's ultimately like, there is a really easy answer, which is for hundreds of years, it was a bunch of male researchers, and science earlier on, especially, just assumed creatures were a lot like humans, right? And so they took on, I mean, we still do it, right? We anthropomorphize, I can never say that word, animals a lot, right? So like that bias to swing towards always male and always what we do was pretty strong. It's only been maybe the last 30 to 50 years where that has really changed. And it's still growing, right? Allie, what was the percentage of female researchers recently on female bird research? It was much bigger lately. It's like 50, it's over 50% now, right?
Wow.
Oh, Allie, you're on.
Sorry, it's 68% of women are now, well, not of women in general, but 68% of first authors on a paper, on a scientific paper, are now women. And that's in stark contrast. And that's for female bird song specifically related papers. So females are currently leading the research in female bird song.
Damn.
Which is really interesting. I think another good point to bring up is where a lot of the research on birds was being done historically. And so in the tropics, a lot of female birds sing. It's much more common there. But in North America, it's we're not exactly sure, but it's rarer for a female bird to sing than it is in other areas. So in temperate regions, it's not as common for female birds to sing.
And that's where a lot of the early kind of science was being done in ornithology, right? A lot of our early ornithological societies were founded in like the United States or the UK, these zones. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so earlier you guys were talking about like you don't know if it's a female or a male, and we just for a while assumed that it might be a male, it could be a female. Do they have different songs then? Is there an easy way to say like, males are more pronounced in their songs or females are more pronounced, or we just don't know yet?
Yeah, so some of the research that was done into female bird song was actually trying to figure out, okay, what's the difference between the song and the call, first of all, so there's a difference there.
Okay.
And then what can we call a song? And so when some of the recent research was being done, they actually had to come up with a new statistical model to compare the similarity between a female bird song and a male bird song so that they could say it was indeed a song and not a call, which I just thought was fascinating.
Huh.
And then on top of that, you're thinking about what the birds are communicating. So they're communicating different things potentially. So some birds duet, the male and female duet back and forth, and they're working together to defend their territory, whereas other birds are saying other messages. So one of the birds, Jason and I talked about the research that was done, was on eastern bluebirds. And so when the females sing there, it's a pair bonding. So studies show that the pairs that mate multiple years are more successful at rearing young. So they have more successful fledging of their young.
So the pairs that sing together stay together.
Pairs that sing together stay together. And so the bluebirds do this super cute thing where when the female sees the male come in, she'll do this cute little song, and then they'll snugs. They'll cuddle up. And they'll be like, you're important and I love you. And let's
validation. That just says
know.
date nights are important, right?
Right.
It's
right.
They're strengthening that pair bonding. You need to have those date nights, and it's gonna, because in the study that I read, it actually they increase their reproductive success the longer they stay together for those nesting.
I mean,
So
it makes
that's-
sense when you have those date nights.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go out and get ice cream and Netflix and chill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another one I think
You
is
were
super
right.
cute
Nice.
is from the wrens, because wrens are super sassy and I love them. So wrens, when the female sings, they are saying like to their mate, they're like, where are you? Like, where are you?
Okay.
I need to know where you are right now.
I can see
And that just made me giggle because they are so,
And they're so small.
sassy.
Like there's so much sass in that little tiny bird.
I know,
Yeah.
I love them.
Jason, were you saying something?
I was just wondering if Allie writes snugs on data sheets, because that's amazing. I love that word.
Yeah, it's definitely in my behavior analysis.
In your activity budget.
Mhm.
It goes right on the activity budget. They're snugs.
That's so cool.
Someone asked a question close to what we're talking about that I want to
Yeah. Oh
address.
yeah. The tropics. When I saw that, go ahead.
So why are the female birds singing more often in the tropics? And I think there could be several reasons, but a main one is if you think about, or at least one of the theories from the studies is, if a bird has to migrate, right, those tropical birds are staying. If they live there year round and they're singing, they're guarding a territory together. It's a very different life, right? They're not having to do that long travel, which is adding so much that they need to do to get food and energy to do that. So a lot more of the birds that migrate and then have to like real quick find a mate, set up the nest, all of that they have to do very fast and then migrate again. That's just too much on a female bird to get all that done in their activity budget or in their life budget. So song has evolutionarily been lost, right? They believe, if you look at the evolutionary history, that most birds, both female and male, sang way back when, right? And now that has changed in migratory birds especially.
The OGs were the singers, and then it just.
Yeah, the ladies are tired. Who needs to sing?
Yeah.
And thinking about that too, a lot of song is learned and practiced. So if you have to learn a song, that's even more in your activity budget. So not only do you have to, do this communication, you also have to take the time to practice and get it right.
Don't you become a bird that learns it wrong, and then what happens? That's really.
You're an outcast, man. You're never gonna find a mate.
I've heard
that
one
like
of
a-
those. A poor little white-throated sparrow learned it all wrong. Sad.
Is that like a thing that happens a lot? Like, or is it just not necessarily that, or we don't know about it, I guess, that they learn the song
Did you
wrong?
guys hear that about that? Or, and maybe this isn't like breaking news anymore, but that cool study they did maybe last year or something about zebra finches. Like they found out that the embryos in the egg were actively learning the parent's song, right? Is that right? So they were learning it literally in the egg still.
Huh.
And learning that song. But you can learn it wrong, right? Potentially.
Yeah, I think it's just like any type of learning you can. I mean, I don't think it's super common, and it shouldn't be passed on. Like I
Right.
assume that the white-throated
Yeah, what if
sparrow
they're not
I heard,
successful? Right.
right, instead of singing "Old Sam Peabody Peabody," it would be "Peabody Peabody Peabody Old Sam." I'm assuming that didn't get passed on. Like the poor
That
bird
makes-
just didn't.
They didn't do
Yeah, but if you
they didn't
think
do a
about it,
remix version or anything like that. Like that.
if you think about it, some of it has to get passed on because we have these regional dialects and we have differences in songs,
Dialect.
you know, so
I didn't even
birds
think
have
about that.
dialect.
maybe not if it was an extreme case where they were singing Cat's Meow instead of Peabody, but you know, there is some differences that get learned over time.
Just because I'm not a bird nerd, can you help a bird person that's trying to be a bird nerd out? And what bird makes that Peabody noise? Maybe for, some of our listeners might not know either.
Yeah, this is for our listeners.
This is for our
not for
listeners
Monica.
and asking for a friend.
Yeah.
A white-throated sparrow.
Okay, thank you.
I'm actually shocked that we went a whole 30 minutes before you do some amazing bird calls, Jason. So I'm probably going to call you out to do a few more of those before we're done. But I do have a question now. So we have established that some birds actually do sing, and we've established that they've just been or female birds, that they've just been kind of underlooked at. But there are, a lot of females also don't sing, and there are some reasons. There's been studies showed that both males and females, during the incubation and the chick rearing, they're a bit quieter. They want to avoid the predators, attracting predators and things like that. But what else do females do besides, the surprising, exciting thing that some of them sing and they can surprise us? We're still learning, new science about them. What do they do to influence males? What do they do to drive that we're finding out now? Like their song, their plumage, behavior, all those kind of exciting things. That's kind of surprising to us.
Before we jump right into that,
Yes.
Can we just talk about the fact we do need more research in
Absolutely.
the bird song? So research is actively being done, and one thing that's being done is a community science project where the researchers are asking for help in recording and documenting bird song. So there's a community science project, and I'll bring it up I'll stick it in the chat, and it's called femalebirdsong.org is the website. And so they're asking people, if you already do eBird data collection and you observe a bird singing, to mark it in your notes, and then also if you can get audio of it and upload it. And Nebraska currently on their map has no observations, so it's yeah, I know, we're slacking.
The call out.
Wow. For all of
We
you,
want you.
Yeah, and for all of you that don't get it here in the chat too, when we send you an evaluation, kind of a wrap-up email here tomorrow, we will also include this as well. So if you're frantically writing or trying to copy and paste, we'll get it to you.
Allie, I feel like that website needs a really good a spokesperson, like a amazing, like Beyonce needs to get on this. Beyonce for the birds or something, and she needs to like shout it out or something that we need this.
Okay, well, I'll try to put in a good word.
I was going to
that.
say, do you feel like you could get on that, or okay?
I'll have my people call her people.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. You're fantastic. Okay, so that's super cool. Hopefully we'll get more Nebraska community scientists on that project. Okay, what about, so what are females doing that are like driving the male birds crazy or making them do interesting things? Their songs, their dance, all those things. Do we have some fun, like anecdotal stories about Nebraska birds?
Oh, sure. I mean, I mean, Kathy just mentioned in the chat, the cranes. I mean, that is one of the most amazing pair bonds that you're going to find is cranes around the world have, like, they communicate with dance. I like to look at the birds where, again, the female might seem to be, right, they are dimorphic, they look totally different. They tend to be more muted in colors and dimorphic. And I'm thinking like birds of paradise. Now, we don't have those in Nebraska, but right, but where it's a bird, might be one of those female birds that you don't see much, but like their choices have driven the male to do something almost extreme. I personally love marsh wrens. Both the male and female are not very bright. They're tiny and really loud, right? We talked about wrens. They're really like sassy. But I love the marsh wren because she makes him build 2 nests, 5 nests, 10 nests, like so many nests. And she'll inspect each one and be like, no, like, and just until he gets it just right? Or she'll pick somebody else.
I just need to make a comment. She sounds like she is not bossy. It sounds like she has leadership skills is what I want to say about
Thank
that.
you.
She
Absolutely.
just has standards.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, think about that activity budget, like we mentioned earlier. Like that male is expending how much energy?
But she's
just building a nest that
but
she might
she's
not even
got
like.
you know, she's doing all this all this energy on this
That
1
is-
or 2 eggs.
That's true.
That's her
She needs
life's
She
work.
needs a good place to put those eggs.
Like I don't blame her. You go, girl. Anyways, carry on.
When we talked about this, Amber, before too, where it can get so extreme where it's deadly and dangerous for the male, right? There are hummingbirds. Peacock is probably one of the most famous, where what the female is attracted to, what she wants to see to show that that male is healthy, the best parent, whatever that is that they're looking for. And it's usually a combination of many of those things, but like makes that bird almost too easy to see for predators. Or like the spatule tail hummingbird, when they show off, those long tail feathers are so heavy for that tiny hummingbird, it can barely fly. Like that male gets caught all the time because it's like so difficult.
So it's interesting to me. It gets caught, it gets predated on, but somehow that must be successful enough for before they go down in a fiery flame of predation, they do the thing and pass on their genes, right? So it's working somehow, right? That's fascinating.
Yep.
What about, is there something, an example like that in Nebraska that's like the male is showy and gorgeous and beautiful, but it's not so good for his maybe personal health or well-being for predators, but the ladies love it? Do we have a Nebraska example?
2 of the most common, red-winged blackbirds and northern cardinals. 2 of the most predated male birds of all time. Like they get picked off all the time because they both are so bright. Also, I mean, the more I learn about red-winged blackbirds, the females are very polyandrous, which is they'll have mate with several males. And a lot of times that can be either to have, you may have eggs of several different fathers in a nest to sort of like, if they're not sure, like they really want to make sure they've got the best like genes in those eggs.
Like she's hedging her bets.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Some of them go, this bird isn't in Nebraska, but there's a sparrow in the UK, the hedge sparrow, that goes so far as she mates with several males, but she only actually, they expel, this is getting really nerdy and technical, but they expel sperm of the other second and third male. It's only the first one they truly lay eggs with genes of, but that way the other males think that they have genes in the nest. She will help guard the nest. So like, it's so cool. It's like amazing. I think that female hedge sparrow is a rock star. Like, that's so cool.
I'm starting to like birds, guys.
Right?
I'm like glued to the screen here.
Especially the ladybirds.
Yeah.
They're intelligent.
Yeah. I see someone also put in pheasants in the chat. That'd be a great example as well. Right. Except, you know, they're not quite a native bird of Nebraska. We do have them, but they're non-native as far as that,
that
kind
beautiful
of excessive plumage kind of stuff. Right.
Also, go in the same family. We've got native grouse that, I mean, look at the prairie chicken and the sharp-tailed grouse. Like, how much more ridiculous? I mean, I've got balloons on my neck. I mean, come on.
Why do we have balloons on your neck? Because that's what the ladies wanted.
That's what the ladies wanted.
That's so
right. And on top of that, you're going to stand in an open field with balloons on your neck and
drawing
dance
attention to yourself
with other males.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
My jaded male self always assumes that like again, this is that bad human thing we do of anthropomorphizing, but I've watched enough female birds. Like I watched this great flock of hooded mergansers. There were females on a log resting and then males, and the males were just flinging their crests in their, and doing all of this dancing, and all the females were asleep. I'm like, guys, like
What?
I always
It
assume
kind of sounds like maybe a Saturday night at a bar during college or something. Like they're trying to show off, and no thanks.
I always think when it gets so extreme that what the male has to do, like there's this bird in, I'm going to forget where they are. I'm going to say New Zealand, but I think there's several species. The oripendula, where the male sings and flips upside down on the branch. Yeah. I think those female birds are like, okay, what can we make? Like, what else can we make?
That's the mannequin, right?
That's the oripendula. The mannequins jump each other and work in teams.
Oh yeah, the mannequins do that dance and stuff, and they get a wingman. The mannequins have wingman, right? And they like help each other, but then just the one gets the lady.
Wow.
That's so interesting.
So now that we're talking about all these cool birds, I know Allie wanted to talk about how cool, we're talking about female birds here, but like all the stuff that they have to do, like carrying the eggs and how heavy and percent body weight they are, or sometimes the females kind of have a switched role. We always kind of assume that the female sitting on the nest. That's not always the case, right?
Yeah, some female birds are like empowered. They're going to work. They're doing other things.
Yeah, they're, like you said, going to work. And Jason and Allie, I don't know if you've seen, I recently saw something that said if the females and the males look similar to each other as far as color and pattern, they kind of split their time on the nest, like it's almost equal. Is that a thing, or was that like fake news that I saw?
I can't say it. I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
Well, I think it's definitely not all of them, but I think it's more common in birds that look alike.
Okay.
Because, like robins, you can tell a male from a female, but they are close.
They're closely, yeah.
And both the male and the female will, like chickadees, males they'll sit on the eggs and things.
I guess it makes sense though, because you don't want a red northern cardinal sitting on a nest.
Exactly. Yeah.
It'd be really easy to find the nest then.
But then you also go the opposite, where like blue jays, I think the male helps, but so does grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, and brother and sister. Like that's
what?
Right. And there's such a gang. Who's gonna go after their nest anyway? They're just,
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So it just seems like there's so much more of a diversity in almost like the roles that female birds and male birds play that we have assumed. I mean, and just the general
knowledge. We do a lot of
knowledge.
assuming.
You know what I mean?
You know what they say when you assume.
Yeah.
I can't say it on air, but yes.
What did they say? I've never heard of it.
It's not appropriate.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry.
So
Let's
fine.
move on.
Okay. But like, what are there some cool examples of like that complete role reversal that you wouldn't think of in female and male birds that you can?
Well, I think I'm going to let Jason talk about this one. I'm going to let him take it because I know he's excited to talk about it.
I see him really excited.
We do see him.
And I bet you, I know several of the folks on the call, so you may know of this one, but one of the most famous is the phalaropes. There are three that are in North America. The red phalarope, the red-necked phalarope, and around Nebraska, just moved through here about a few weeks ago, Wilson's phalaropes. Not only are the females amazing, they're like so cool, and they do everything sort of the opposite of what we've learned to expect or assume, which we shouldn't do. But they also have an amazing, both the males and female, this amazing feeding pattern. So if you've never watched them, YouTube, look up a video of phalaropes feeding, and you get thousands of them, and they spin in circles, and it creates this tiny cyclone, and then they pick the bugs off as they zoom to the top.
Wow.
It's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Is that strategy called I'm just being nerdy right now, but is that like is that called something, that strategy? That sounds fascinating.
Oh, I'm sure
it's like cleaning when they're
I'm pretty sure the scientific term is like stirring the pot.
Yes.
Are you pulling that?
Creating a tornado.
You're totally pulling that.
I like
tornadoing. Yeah, that might be it. So one thing I think is interesting to think about is how the females can be so much, I don't know, clever. They can show such cleverness So we talked a little bit about the promiscuity. So like maybe they'll select one mate for one thing, like parental care. So this mate is going to be able to defend a good territory and provide me food and help raise the babies, and that's great. But at the same time, she might be seeking other males to mate with because they have more desirable traits. Another thing is like the female birds that are nest parasites, like the brown-headed cowbird who lays their egg in a totally different bird's nest. And, you're talking about that energy budget, they don't have to spend as much time with direct care as, as some of the other females. So that kind of wits about them, I think, is really interesting.
And I think that's so interesting too. And when I've heard from people before about cowbirds and that strategy, that they're parasitic nesters, I've heard things, and going back to Jason, what you said, that comment of anthropomorphizing, I've heard people say like, oh, they're being lazy. What lazy moms dropping their kids off at another nest, you take care. But if you think about it in terms of, that's us thinking in our human view,
Yes.
right? But if you think about it in terms of that energy budget, what an efficient strategy that is.
Yes.
Yeah, and also there's studies now that show that the mothers come back and they check on their young. And they also, once the young gets old enough, they'll start to teach them things.
No way, I didn't know that part.
Maternal care isn't entirely gone, it's just a different strategy.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't go far. Well, and the other thing is, so many birds, we realize like that's one of the most famous ones, right? The cuckoos in Europe, and then the cowbird here. But like way more animals do it, especially birds. Especially a lot of female duck species.
Really?
Many female ducks, will lay eggs in other nests. They call it egg dumping in ducks because it won't be just one nest. They will have one egg here and one egg there. But yeah, there will be female mergansers or female redheads with all kinds of baby birds following them, ducklings, and like they're not all there.
So Jason, are you telling me the ugly duckling is a real story?
Oh my gosh, this changes
But
everything.
it's not ugly, remember?
So Jason, I've never heard that one. Are they putting their eggs in different nests of the same species? Like, I'm going to put this in my sister's nest because she made it and I don't have to make it now. Or is it different species?
Well,
You know
I
what I'm
love
saying?
the idea that it would be in your sister.
I know. I
Like,
mean, I'm just thinking
awesome.
about
Like,
my
that
sister.
shows like,
making them do the work.
she's the
Yeah.
good mom, I'm going to put him on
Right.
there. I don't know if it's that thoughtful, but so I think it's more common for them to be within similar, same species, right? Like a
Okay.
hooded merganser in another hooded merganser.
Okay.
But it definitely happens. I want to say it's redheads, and don't quote me on that, but I think
Wow.
redhead ducks, females,
Huh.
lay their eggs in several, and so do the, why can't I think of the mountain pond birds? The two golden eyes, sparrows and common golden eyes. They egg dump a lot. And it doesn't have to be another golden eye.
So,
It can be
You say
dog-
egg dump. Is this not parasitic nesting, or is it
Yeah.
something different?
It's different because they will still raise their own nest. So that's why I think it's called egg dumping. They don't. So a brood parasite doesn't have a nest at all.
Okay.
Whereas these other females, they will have a nest and a brood of their own, but they may also have mated early and not been done with their nest or just decided to put them there. I don't know the full research, but they will lay only a couple eggs. It won't be like that cowbird will lay as many eggs as they can get up to their full clutch in another bird's nest, and that's their only way to nest. Whereas some of these female ducks will put an egg here and an egg over there, and then they'll have their own, young in a nest. So
That's really interesting.
there's lots of
That's really
strategies.
Wow.
Is there anything, do you guys know, changing a little bit, it just seems like there's so much that drives that selection between both females and males, in their behaviors and what dictates their energy budget. Is there anything that we're doing that is are we ever driving anything, in our behaviors or in our urban environments or anything like that, that's changing some of these really cool things that you're chatting about, some of these strategies or some of these songs or some of these courting behaviors or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing would be we are impacting bird habitat so much that there is, that's definitely going to change things and diminish the ability to do some of these behaviors. If a prairie chicken doesn't have a place to lek, it's not going to be able to, that sort of thing. There's also been some studies with urban soundscapes, so urban noise from like traffic and noise pollution, where birds will change their behavior around song because of the noise, essentially.
Like, are they getting louder, or are they changing their song?
I think
They're
in
having
some
different beat,
instances
essentially,
it's
right?
a changing in the timing
Okay.
of the bird song.
Wow. Okay.
Because of like early morning traffic, things like that.
Yeah, it could be a lot of different things. And Bob Wells just pointed out a great example, right? That cowbird we were talking about already changed once, right? They used to always follow huge herds of bison. And one of the reasons they evolved to not have their own nest was as they needed to follow the herd. So laying one in one spot, their food source would be gone because they'd pick birds off. But we then now, like so many hundreds of years later, have changed their habitat again because we've fragmented the habitat so much. Cowbirds used to only lay their eggs in grassland bird nests like meadowlarks, stick thistles, right? Now they can get into towhee nests, yellow warbler nests, things on the forest edge
Wow.
that they never used to get to before.
Is that having a negative impact on those species? Like, kind of secondhand from us, we dictated that, and then that is like, is that having a bad impact?
Yeah, it can. I think towhees is one that they know. Bluebirds, which why boxes with the exact right hole, which the cowbird cannot get in, is an important thing. There's certainly some eastern species that live on that forest edge,
Right.
because cowbirds don't like forest. They won't go in the deep forest.
Okay.
But that edge or near houses, like they get into cardinal nests, robin nests. That is not what they would do historically.
And I did not know that.
Wow.
That's really interesting.
I don't
I
know.
think another good thing to
Advent.
bring up, bringing it back to the research, we were talking about how female birds are overlooked in research a lot, is the fact that there can be behavioral differences in foraging between males and female birds. And so if you're only paying attention to the male birds and you're only managing for what the male birds are doing, then you have instances like one that was studied was the golden winged warbler, where, you know, the males and females, they fed at different elevations. And so the female habitat was being greater or like more impacted by human development than the male. But if you don't have the females, if they're not able to survive because of a lack of habitat, they're not going to be able to breed. So just thinking, even just like rethinking how we're learning and managing birds can, be important as well as we keep changing the landscape.
Allie, I haven't heard that either. And that makes me think, even bigger picture, I've never heard of like different foraging behaviors between male and female, like in birds. Is it like that with any other group of animals? Like, do different, like females and male reptiles do things that differently, that starkly, that you'd have to literally have different habitat management plans, or mammals or things like that. That's just really interesting and fascinating. I wonder why there's such a difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you have an answer to that, but I'm just thinking out loud. Like, that makes me think about things really differently in the animal world in general,
I know fish do.
Really?
Yeah, so female fish, especially when they have eggs, will go to, and I don't quote me on this if it's warmer or colder, but it's one of those, and go deeper, and they feed at a different level than the males once they've mated. And so like at different times of year, and then other times of year, they're feeding in like the same areas. And I know it's spring, right? When usual, like lake fish, and I'm talking lake fish, not sea fish, because from the...
Well, we are in Nebraska. That's what we know. Yeah.
But yeah, so fish I know do similar, right? Where like through spring and summer, the female fish are compared to the males is totally different. So I would assume that it's going to be similar in some other animals as well. Well, coyote, right? Don't the male, once the female is with the little one, like they're gone. They're off somewhere else, probably eating and doing very different things.
So there's a lot of different behaviors. And now we know it's Jason the bird nerd and Jason the fish nerd. So now we can call on him for different programs.
Oh no, that was my
so exciting. That's your one fact. That's so exciting.
Well,
Like, I want to ask you guys one more question, and then I want to make sure we give about a few minutes at the end for our lightning round to get to all the questions. We have like just maybe like 5 or 6
yep.
that our participants asked when they registered, and we want to make sure we get to them because there's some really good ones. But before we do that, I want to ask you each, it's kind of 2 parts. What's your favorite bird species and why? And what's one thing you wish everyone knew about birds? That's a big one. Sorry. That's probably tough.
Is it hard to pick? Because like someone asked me my favorite reptile, I'd be like, well, this one in Nebraska, but this one like in the world, but then this one because, yeah.
I feel like that's
I
where
strongly dislike the favorites question.
I'm okay. How like like group or something?
What's a bird that you're
favorite
interested
today
in and why?
How about that?
Today. So one that I really love is the kingbird, or sorry, I said the wrong bird, so clearly I love it a lot. The kingfisher.
Mhm.
I love kingfishers. I think they're super cool. I love that they nest in banks along rivers. I think that's awesome. I love that they're so top heavy with their giant beaks and that they dive into water. So I guess for today's purposes only, I'm gonna say the kingfisher.
That's totally fair. We will not box you in. This is just
Yeah,
for today.
please don't box me in.
And one with the female who's brightly colored, right?
I was
The
just gonna
That's
female-
true too.
Female and male.
Perfect for today.
Yay!
Huh.
Very cool. And one thing you wish everyone knew about birds, Allie? Unless you want to think on that one.
Like, talk to me. What's one thing you wish I knew to get me like super
Monica
enthused about birds?
specifically. I mean, I just really wish that people, maybe not what they knew about birds, but just would take a little more time to stop and observe birds.
Good.
I think when you just spend a little bit more time paying attention to them, they have so much to teach you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And that's true of the whole natural world.
Absolutely, yes.
That's why we're all nature
I wish
nerds.
people would take time to observe reptiles too. so-
Absolutely.
but we'll get in that later.
We can do that at another night.
Yeah.
Okay. This is for birds tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Jason, what about you?
I'm going to start with the second half of that because Allie inspired me there because I was sort of leaning with similar to the answer of to really just observe. But I will add, forget what they're called.
Mm.
The next time you go birding, don't worry about knowing what it's named. It's something I do with kids as they're starting birding or if they're getting into that or any beginning birder.
Mhm.
They always want to know, well, what's that one? What's that one?
Okay.
And that's important to me. I'm a lister. I want to see a lot of species of birds. So I do want to know, but in general, especially when you start, that's not important. And what it does is it stops the looking. So what I would consider is even if you know what the bird is, pretend that you're the first person that ever saw it and look at it again. And what would you name it?
Wow.
What that will do is just make you look longer. You'll see something from that bird, especially female birds, right? The next time you see a female bird, look longer. You'll see something they're doing that I bet you didn't know. I mean, I watched these group of magpies play. The only thing I can describe is they played hopscotch. But it was because I just decided to stop and wait and watch. And then I'm like, wait, what are they doing? I never had seen that before.
I feel like I ask that most of the time I see magpies.
Right. Well, they're in that Jay and Corvid family. They're
Mhm.
super smart. So who knows what they could be doing? Plotting revenge against humans, probably.
Exactly.
Um,
That's an awesome one, Jason. I really like that a lot. It's good to just rethink how Allie says we should observe more. Absolutely agree. And Jason says, and I even like how you said, almost like stop your ego or stop your this is what I already know. Stop that assumption and just look at it for what it is and see what you can learn from that. Look at the field marks in a different way and all these things, and it'll help. That's awesome. I like it. What about your favorite species?
and that's a really hard one. I will say this. I'll go with, I had a favorite bird for a long time when I was able to grow hair. It was the tufted titmouse, and I had a faux hawk, and so I thought I was one. That is like my icon, my avatar. I need to figure out what the new one is now that I'm more is there a bald bird and not a bald eagle? Because that's
I
white.
heard someone recently-
Vulture? Are you a
Oh
vulture?
yeah, I could be a
Jason?
vulture. I do love vultures. They're super
Do you
cool.
puke on people often when they
Do
scare
you
you?
pee on your legs when you need to cool down,
I'm not
or
going to answer any of these questions in public.
do you?
Do you eat roadkill?
Do you really have like the amazing sense of smell and like you communicate and you do all those things with?
No.
Do you like to ride thermals?
All right. So
Oh,
I
that
like
would be fun.
vultures. I am not like a vulture. Let's
Okay,
get
that's fair. That's really good. I like that. I feel like, do you have a favorite bird species?
Oh, I was gonna actually say turkey vulture.
No, that's exciting.
Love me some turkey vultures. They are pretty cool. I agree, Jason.
I-
All those
they're
things.
awesome.
I think they're up there. I think for probably a reason, like they get such a bad rap.
They do.
And
But
so-
I have a soft spot for all those animals that people just don't
That's
understand.
why you love snakes.
That is, yes.
Right, you go
All
for
those
the
things.
underdog.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard one, but I might lean towards woodpeckers only because that is my son Sawyer, who's 4. It's his favorite bird, and he's always seeing him out the window. And I don't care if it's like the 20th woodpecker I've seen that weekend. I will always stop and like we look together, and it's so exciting. So kind of a soft
And they have
spot.
those cool zygodactyl feet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Look at me. I'm a bird.
You are
I'm-
officially a bird nerd.
There we go.
You've graduated. I'm so proud of you. Are we ready for lightning round? We're gonna do it. We have a few minutes left. We'll do it very briefly.
We're just
We're
gonna.
not ready, Monica. You have to say what zygodactyl means to those that don't know.
Oh yeah,
Oh, very good.
zygodactyl means that their feet kind of go. Is it both? All 4 their digits. The 2 go up and 2 go down, and so they're able to move up and down those trees. Right, bird nerds, is that correct? They can actually move their little digits.
Yeah, they can move the 3rd one so that it can make an X, right? They can move one back below. Yeah, they're super cool.
Super proud of you
Yes.
right now.
Look at me.
Big moment.
All right.
All right, lightning round. Do you want to read the first one?
Yeah, so if you guys just want to answer like as quick as you can, we will get started. All right, so what do you think of the general health of the bird populations in the Midwest? What do you consider to be like the 3 biggest threats that we have?
Well, grassland birds are declining. That's the largest suite of birds or group of birds that are declining the most. Second would be coastal birds. So grassland birds are really low. Most birds are declining. The only few that are going up or staying stable are really what we would call suburban birds, birds that are used to humans and benefit from us. Cardinals, blue jays, things that like town.
So this is, yeah,
Okay,
this is
go
a
ahead.
long list here, but what are some endangered and threatened birds that we have in Nebraska? I know it's kind of a long list to name them.
You can speak to that a bit, but also in that email, we'll send some good information about
Yes.
from our website, some threatened and endangered species in Nebraska. But anyways, off the top of your head, good ones.
Allie, do you got this one? Or I'll do this one. Well, I was just going to say inland leastern, but actually that was just delisted. What do we have? Piping plovers come through. Whooping cranes, probably the most famous when they come through late after the sandhill crane. Do we have anybody else threatened or endangered? We have a few on the state concern list, but
Yeah, so we have quite a few on the tier 1 and 2 list, which is the state list.
Yeah.
But as far as T&E go, you might have named them.
yeah, I think it's just those 2. We had the tern before, but now they've done well with recent work along the Platte River to keep the sandbars clean. The inland least terns are doing better.
All right, one really quick more one. We kind of talked a little bit about bird feeders, but should bird feeding change seasonally? Really quick.
Yes.
I tend to feed more in the winter time.
Well, think about the energy budget.
sure.
That ties back to the activity budget, right?
So I tend to
so,
feed
like-
from fall through spring. So maybe when I think things might be migrating, if I think feeders are going to be helpful, I feed in the winter, especially if it's like you're already feeding and a cold snap happens. You don't want to stop feeding because the birds will already be spending energy going to your feeder. Bird feeding is one of those tricky ones for me to make recommendations on, though. I feel like.
And clean your feeders. Lately, there's been a lot of unfortunate salmonella and conjunctivitis going around at unclean feeders.
How often should we be cleaning our feeders for everyone out there?
I think
Probably
it's every 2 weeks to 10 days.
Yeah,
Just
I
kind
would
of
say once a week. Yeah.
Wash them
Do
out
we-
with warm water. That's what I've heard, right?
Or do we bleach it?
actually like bleach, use Dawn, that kind of stuff.
I was taught to use light apple vinegar or white vinegar instead of
Okay.
bleach. It's a
That's
more
good.
natural
That makes sense.
cleaner.
Right. Do you want to share screen for that last part?
Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us. We just have like a couple more things here that we're gonna share. I'm gonna just share my screen here really quickly. So just to let everybody know, we kind of talked a little bit about questions here, but again, please make sure that you register individually for each of these other Nebraska Nature Nerd Nights. Our next one is going to be June 15th, 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time. We're going to be partying with Parasites.
I am so excited for this.
Yeah, and we actually have UNL, a couple of professors and people that work in that parasitology lab joining us.
It's one of the biggest parasitology labs in the country.
Yes,
Did you
and
know
they
that?
have all these specimens they're going to
Mhm.
talk about, and they're going to actually hold up jars of parasites as close
I
as they
think so.
can to the screen. So
Maybe we can borrow a jar
yeah,
and talk them into
yeah.
that. That'll be cool. Yeah.
Yes. All right, so make sure you do register for that. And then if you really loved this and you just want more, we have a lot of other resources that you guys can utilize. And we will put this all in that email that we send you as well. If you missed this tonight or simply just want to watch it again, we'll put it on our YouTube channel. We have a Facebook page, Instagram. You can check out our main Game and Parks page. And also for those of you that like Nebraska birds, we talk about this. It's Bird Month. So please check out nebraskabirdmonth.org. There's a lot of virtual events and even some in-person events as well. So one thing we also want to say is thank you to our experts.
Absolutely. Jason and Allie, this has been fantastic.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's fantastic. Allie and Jason, you're two of my favorite nerds. So I'm really excited that we all got to hang out together, at least virtually, and be nerdy about birds. And I'm super proud of you. You're officially a bird nerd now.
Jason, I have way more, and Allie, I have way more respect for birds now. So this is awesome.
It's a big,
thank you.
That's what tonight was about.
Yeah,
just for that,
it's just about me. So thank you. All right. Well, we thank you guys so much again. Please make sure you join us next time, June 15th. And again, thank you, Allie. Thank you, Jason, very much.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night,
Bye.
everyone.